Hi everybody and welcome to the last video of this year that I plan to publish. Last video also this year on the simplified openings, and to end the year on a good note, in this video I would like to present you with another good way to deal with one of the most hated openings in chess, the London system. And as the name of the video suggests, we will take a look at what Anatoly Karpov, the 12th world champion, used to play against this hated and very much annoying London system. But to make it as a bonus, the same system that Karpov applied against the London system is applicable to the Torre attack as well. So we'll take a look at both of these setups by white. And as you will notice, the good part about Karpov's plan is that it's applicable against both, and especially as the pawn structure that can arise in these systems will be more or less the same. Even better, Black's plan will be the same. So it's a 2-in-1 combo, a double whammy that you get as a New Year's present. Karpov's plan against two pretty annoying setups that white can employ after d4. So let's get going. d4, knight f6, knight f3. Note that Karpov's plan will equally be applicable if white starts with bishop f4 and plays the London, withholding the development of the knight on from g1. Nothing will change because black goes e6, then continues with c5, as we shall see, and at some point white will play knight f3 and things will be the same. So knight f3, e6. This is a very good additional system for black if, for example, your repertoire is based on the e6 systems without playing d5. So for example, if you play the Queen's Indian in combination with the Nimzo Indian, for example, something that I gave you a full repertoire about in some of my previous videos, this can be a good combination to fit in to complete the repertoire based on those two openings. So if you need a repertoire against the London and the Torre without the move d5, some of these systems with d5 you can also see on my channel in the previous videos, but without d5 you can use Karpov's repertoire. So e6. So now let's make a exploration of the Torre attack with bishop g5, and then we will go back to the London system with bishop f4. I start with the Torre attack because Karpov played some impressive games here, and since the pawn structure will be the same and the plans will be the same, we can actually study these in combination, as it doesn't really matter for black if white plays the London or the Torre. So h6, always useful to get rid of the bishop h4, and now the move c5. So black is attacking white's center, yeah? And then, as we shall see, the plan is to go b6 and develop the bishop either to b7 or even more cunningly, if you will, to a6. We will see both ideas. So now, as I explained, this repertoire is more about understanding of the plans and the structures rather than particular move orders. So the move orders don't matter so much, as both black and white will play the same moves in one order or another. And what is important is that after the development ends by both sides, how black should continue and what plans he should pursue. So the basic distinction here for white is which structure he should prefer. Now, one structure arises after the move c3, and when black takes c takes d4, white recaptures with the c pawn, keeping the symmetrical structure. Yeah? Another plan, and this one is much more popular nowadays, is to play the move e3, and after c takes d4, e takes d4, giving some more dynamism in the position thanks to the somewhat asymmetrical structure in the position. We will take a look at this one as well. I repeat this, keep in mind that the same structures can arise in the London system, the only difference being the bishop being on f4 rather than on h4. So let's see what happens if white really wants to keep it dull and go c3. So bishop e7, e3, b6, bishop d3, take on d4, and take on d4. Of course, if you want to kind of clarify the situation, you can chop off on d4 immediately, not giving white a choice to recapture with the e-pawn later on if he changes his mind. But like I said, doesn't really matter for black, because as you will see, the plans are really straightforward and easy to follow, so you may as well give white the choice to choose the structure. But okay, let's go on and explore the structures after c takes d4. So b6, e3, b6, bishop d3, takes, bishop b7, castles, and knight bd2. Normally, this is not the most exact move order, because with this move order, the knight can also come to c3. But for example, if you don't want to actually allow this, you can still continue bishop b7, wait for white to go knight bd2, and only then take on d4. Okay, or just castle and then take on d4. You can, I mean, the rule of thumb would be once white lands the knight on d2, you can take on d4, and then in case of cd4, white won't be able to develop the knight to c3. But like I said, it's more schematic and based on understanding rather than on move orders. About the move orders, you can just remember these, let's say, suggestions, guidelines, rules of thumb that you can use to perhaps limit your opponent's choices. So cd4, bishop b7, castles, knight bd2. So this would be the usual setup that white would go for in case they take on d4 with the pawn. And objectively speaking, this is a symmetrical position, but all the pieces are on the board. But what is good here from black's perspective is that black will actually go for exchanges, and then, as we shall see based on 2 games by Karpov, the higher class or the better play of the player will decide the game. So knight c6, a3, and now typical maneuver for black especially in the Torre, with the bishop being on h4, is the move knight h5. So black is inviting the exchange of the bishops, because after bishop g3, knight g3, black will gain the bishop pair, and after bishop takes e7, knight takes e7, the position is obviously very much equal. But just observe how Karpov masterfully takes over and outplays an Italian international master, Renzo Mantovani. So knight e5, attacking the knight on h5, knight f6, queen e2, d6, getting rid of the knight. Now this is important, as you will notice in all these positions, in both structures, after cd4 or e4, black puts the pawn on d6, almost never on d5. d5 is played only in positions where white plays c4, so then d5, but these are different types of structures. We will take a look at these later. Otherwise, the pawn always goes to d6, and d6, e6, this small center, so-called, very nicely controls all these central squares. So knight f3, queen d7. And one more thing, when it comes to these structures, this is particularly valid in the structures after e takes d4, but here also a little bit, is that black's plan actually is to advance on the queen side, but also advancing in the center with e5. So not d5, closing the bishop and so on, but e5. And let's see how Karpov goes about it. Rook fc1, rook fc8. It appears that, okay, the game should end in a draw, yeah? Just exchanges are happening and so forth, but this doesn't mean that the stronger player cannot try to play for more. Bishop b5, knight c6, self-pinning, yeah, but this cannot be taken advantage of. h3, rook c7, doubling on the c-file. Bishop a6, going for exchanges, takes, rook ac8, doubling on the c-file, knight e1, and now e5. Now this is what I was talking about. This is the way for black, when queenside play is not possible, to take advantage of his better mobility of his pawn structure in the center. So e5, takes. And already you can see that black is somewhat better. You see the knight on d2 is hanging, the knight on e1 is passive, and basically black is taking over the initiative. Rook d1, defending the knight, queen e6, getting away from the d-file, queen c4, queen f5, avoiding exchanges because the queen is vulnerable on c4. Now ideas like knight d4 attacking the queen are possible, so queen c2, but now e4. And okay, 25 moves can be played. Black is much better. Already massive advantage, yeah? Knight d4, knight d5, knight d3, attacking the queen. Black is much better already. So you can check the remainder of the game if you wish. Anatoly Karpov played in the Porto San Giorgio in 1995. You can check the game. Karpov won in something like 16 more moves. Yeah. So this is one illustration how to play the position after in the symmetrical structure after cd4, cd4. Now let's take a look. Let's go back on move 4 and let's explore the other structure after e3, cd4, ed4, and b6. Yeah, so this is the I would say the structure you can more likely expect, because nowadays, especially London system players, they would take with the e-pawn and hope for some, let's say, more dynamic play. But as you shall see, this is a very cunning, I would even say, a system for black, because it effectively dulls any aggressive or active possibilities that white may dream about when playing the London or the Torre in this case. So c3. This is an important moment because ideally black would like to go bishop a6 in one go. And this best works when white has already played the move c3. The reason for this is that if white has not played c3, then after bishop a6, white may go c4 in one go. And this is probably something that should be avoided. We will take a look at the details a bit better when we look at the London move order with bishop f4. Now, once c3 has been played, bishop a6 played by Karpov. An even more ideal situation would be, let's say, bishop e7, bishop d3, and now bishop a6, as white would have to then waste one more tempo to exchange the bishops with bishop a6. But even without that, the exchange of the light squared bishops works very nicely for black, because after it's the exchange, without the light squared bishop on d3, white cannot even dream about any chances, creating any chances on the king side. And now just observe how seemingly easily Karpov outplays a world-class opponent from this position. His opponent in this game was Valery Salov, a top 5 player in the 90s, and Karpov outplays him very smoothly. In spite of this being a blitz game, it just looks like it's too easy. Yeah? Knight bd2, bishop b7, castles, rook e1, knight c7. In these structures, it's not that important really where the knight is. It can be on b8, and then after d6 could go to d7 or c6. Doesn't really matter much, but it's also good to know that from c7 it's a useful piece, as it can support the b5 push, but it can also come to d5. So a4, as I mentioned, black's plan in these structures is very simple, and it's based on advancing on the queen side. So with a4, white is stopping black's move b5. In case white doesn't do that, d6, b5, a5, queen d7, rook coming to c8, b8, b4, and so on will just give black easy play, while at the same time the pawns on d6 and e6 would be an ideal barricade against any active plans that white may have. In fact, d6, a6, e6 pawns, there are no active plans. There is no knight e5. There is no imaginable way for white to even try something against black's king side. So white is kind of stuck, and while black is simply pushing on the queen side. And I can assure you I've won plenty of automatic blitz games like this, when white is simply shuffling the pieces without any clear idea what to do, while I just advance on the queen side and then break through. Something similar happens here, in fact. So a4, d6, knight d4. This is also important to note, because exchanges actually favor black, as then his play gets much easier on the queen side. So knight e4, bishop e7, queen e7, rook e4, queen d7, getting away from the e file. Yeah. Queen b3, rook fb8. A very nice move, preparing b5. Yeah. Rook a e1. this is another illustration of the futility of white's efforts. The knight is really like without an idea on f3 because it can never come to e5. The rook's doubled on the e-file. What are they doing actually? Not really clear. Whereas black goes just b5 and starts play on the queen side. A b5, rook b5, queen a2 and a5. So you see a4, maybe then get the queen to b6, target b2, maybe knight d5, maneuver it to c4, maybe a3 at some point to weaken c3. All these ideas are coming, and what's white doing? Literally nothing and no plans whatsoever. And this is the beauty of this Karpov system, Karpov's setup, if you like, against these two systems by white, the London system and the Torre attack. It can very easily get to this type of position where white is just biting on granite, basically. Knight on f3 doing nothing, rooks on the semi-open e-file doing nothing, whereas black is just pushing the pawns on the queen side and targeting white's queen side. So rook 4 e2, white is now shifting to defense, queen c6, activating the queen slowly, queen a4, queen b7, there we go, already starting the attack on the b pawn, knight queen c4, targeting the knight, and the knight now comes to d5. So this is a very nice illustration of black's idea. The pawn stays on d6 to cover e5, and the knight gets to use the beautiful d5 square. Queen a2, and now it's very nice how Karpov combines play actually takes over on the whole board. So far black has been attacking and advancing on the queen side, but now Karpov starts to take over the center, and as we shall see eventually the king side as well. So knight f4 first, attacking the rook d2 and a4. So fixing the pawn on b2, h4. Note that g3 is not really possible because the knight on f3 is hanging. So h4, at least opening a loop for the king, and now rook f5. So black couldn't really make more progress on the queen side, so he's shifting play on the king side. So now maybe ideas like knight h3 are possible, or knight g2 and then queen f3, because the knight on f3 is attacked twice. So rook e3, defending the knight. Now rook a5. Very nice play by Karpov, joining the rooks along the 5th rank to go for an attack against white's king. Note how white's queen on a2 is out of play. g3, knight drops back to d5, attacking the rook. Rook e d3, keeping the knight defended. Knight f6, attacking the knight, but also the knight can join the attack from e4 and g4. Rook e1, queen e4. Now just observe how like the domination that black obtained, like completely pushing white backwards. And white didn't even commit a single like mistake or blunder or anything. He was simply outplayed, just because black's position had this long-term potential, thanks to the character of the position being such that he could simply go and advance on the queen side, whereas white had nothing active to do. So the knight is attacked, rook e3, queen g4, and now the end is pretty close. Knight g2, queen h3, threatening knight g4, rook f4, and now simple sacrifice, take on f4, gf4, queen h4, and everything falls apart. The pawn is hanging, the rook can join the attack, and it's basically game over. Queen c4, a bit too late for the queen to join, knight g4, attacking the rook, threatening queen h2, and so on. Rook g3, rook f5. Now the pawn is hanging, queen c8 check, king h7, queen d7, rook f4, and okay, queen d6 check on h2, king f1, rook f2, king e1, queen h1, and after rook g1, queen g1 is just mate. So smooth game, no mistakes by white, and yet a convincing and overwhelming basically victory for Karpov, like I said, against one of the top players in the world in the 90s, Valery Salov. In spite of this being a blitz game, it's still an impressive performance by Karpov. You can check the game in the database if you like, played in 1995. So now let's turn our attention to the London system. e6, bishop f4, yeah, and c5 again, yeah. c5 again, and now I would expect the majority of the London system players to play the move e3. I mentioned that okay, the other structure with c3 is still possible. Let's say b6, e3, queen, bishop e7, bishop d3, cd, cd, or just waiting, bishop b7 or and then knight d2 cd cd, when we will have the same structure from the game Anatoly Karpov. The difference being that the bishop is on f4, but this won't make a major difference, especially as later on black plays d6, and the bishop won't be any better than on h4, and the same plans, same ideas will still apply. Additional idea for black, when the bishop is on f4 and the bishop is on e7 already, is the move knight h5, and d6 has been played, okay, to control the e5 square, and then black wins the bishop pair. Yeah, so this means that most likely white will have to waste a tempo on h3 in order to get the bishop to save to be able to save the bishop to go to h2. But again, with a pawn on d6, that bishop will be pretty useless. So let's explore the positions with e3, now cd4, e4, and now b6. So we have basically the same, but the bishop being on f4. And in this version, we will explore a plan for white, which is a bit more aggressive, and that is planned putting the pawn on c4. Still, just to show you that basically the same ideas as previously apply. If white goes automatically c3, bishop e7, bishop d3, bishop a6 is what I explained a bit earlier via the move order of the Torre attack, and we have the same ideas apply. Bishop takes a6, knight takes a6, castles, let's say queen e2, knight c7, and we have the same stuff. Yeah, the difference being, like I said, the bishop being on f4, but that doesn't matter much. d6 is coming, knight d5, and then b5, b4, and so on. Just the same idea of advancing on the queen side. Taking like this exchange bishop for knight doesn't really alter much, again, because black's plan still remains the same. Okay, rook b8, a5, b5, b4, d6, knight d5 can still happen, and black will just have a bishop instead of a knight compared to the Karpov game, not really altering the general plan. So before continuing, I would like to show you actually one good way for white to play, and how white should play if he is not to suffer the fate from the game Karpov. And this game is by another legend of the London system with white, Gata Kamsky, played against Veselin Topalov in Sofia 2007. And this is a good one to remember, and how white should be extremely careful and prophylactic in his thinking if he is not to suffer this attack that happened to Salov. So let's make some moves. Knight bd2, bishop e7, h3, castles. h3, remember that I mentioned this, avoiding these knight h5 ideas. These are possible when both the bishop and the queen control g5, so bishop g5 is not possible. So castles, bishop d3, bishop a6. So you see Topalov is doing the same thing, waiting for the bishop to come to d3 and then playing bishop a6. So takes on a6, knight a6, castles, b5. So he's not even waiting for knight c7, he starts b5 immediately. c3, knight c7, a4. We will have the same, or at least for now, we are having the same tension on the queen side as in the game Karpov, but Kamsky will play much better. Knight d5, hitting the bishop. Bishop goes back, and a6, covering the pawn. And now observe how Kamsky masterfully defends basically on the queen side. Queen b3, queen b6, and now rook a2. So Kamsky plans to double on the a file. And this is actually the way for white to play. He should just forget about any active plans in the London system, like doing something on the king side or anything, because simply not possible. He should just basically try to prevent black's attack. But psychologically, this is not so easy. And this would give him equality, but okay, if white just plays for equality and plays well, I think he basically deserves a draw. So d6, rook fa1, threatening a b5, and then the rook is hanging, therefore rook a b8, and now a b, rook a6, queen d8. And this is an equal position, because this rook will be chased away after knight c7, the other knight will come to d5, but the control of the open a file means that white shouldn't be worse here. So this is a way for white to kind of make sure that he doesn't just get steamrolled on the queen side. So bear in mind that this is a possible way for white to defend against black's attack. So now let's go back to move 6 and check the plan with c4. Yeah, this is a more aggressive plan, more centrally oriented, and here black's reaction will be to play d5 in the center after finishing development. So bishop e7, knight c3, castles, bishop e2. Putting the bishop on d3 won't matter much, because at the later stage black will take on c4, and after bishop c4 we will have the same position. So bishop b7, castles d5, and now rook c1, and d takes c4. In fact, it is possible to postpone the capture with knight c6, yeah, which was actually suggested by Peter Leko after this game was played. In fact, the game we are following is the game Vasquez-Leko, which I personally witnessed as it was played in 2017 in the Italian team championship, where I was actually coaching the women's team, one women's team, and I was in the playing hall when this game took place, and also I witnessed the post-mortem. So Leko suggested the knight c6 as a possible improvement, but what he played with definitely more than good enough. So d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and knight c6. And what we have here is a typical position with an IQP for white, but one that is quite pleasant for black, because he's perfectly developed and can actually start playing against the IQP. So a3, stopping some knight b4 ideas, for example, and planting a knight on d5, and now bishop d6. Seeking exchange, and the point is, after, let's say, bishop d6, queen d6, the queen is quite comfortable on d6, and black can then further attack the pawn on d4. So Vasquez played bishop g5, h6, and now he made a very good decision, steering the game towards equality, because keeping the tension with bishop h4 after bishop e7 allows black a typical, let's say, maneuver in these IQP positions, known from the classical game Anatoly Karpov played from the Queen's Gambit decline, and that is the move knight h5. Let's say queen d3, knight h5. Yeah. So now black either wins the bishop pair after bishop g3, knight g3, or after taking on e7, knight e7 ensures that there is control over the d5 square. The knight will drop back to f6 or f4, and black will have a nice blockade over the d5 square. So Vasquez was correct. He actually took on f6, and after queen f6 sought more exchanges, knight e4, queen f4, take on d6, queen d6, and now d5, getting rid of the IQP. Yeah. And now after e5, bishop d5, rook a d8. It is still white, in fact, who needs to be a little more careful. For example, bishop c4, queen f6, already black is somewhat better, as Leko pointed out, because the queen is attacked, the pawn on b2 is attacked. Yeah, so white needs to be a little bit careful. Knight a5 would target the bishop, the knight on f3. So there are some threats here for black. So Vasquez took on c6, and after bishop c6, queen d6, take d6, rook d6, the endgame is equal, even though one could argue that the bishop is stronger than knight in this open position, but objectively the position is equal, and it did finish in a draw. And this concludes our analysis of the Karpov's way of meeting the Torre attack and the London system. I hope you liked this presentation, because, as I said, I personally like this system very much. I've used it more than once with success, and what I like most about it is the automatic manner in which black can play these positions. Just a few things to remember about them. The idea of bishop a6, then the plans, playing d6, advancing with b5, and so on, which I think gives black really easy play and a very practical way to deal with these two annoying openings for white. So thanks for watching this video. Now it's time for me to say that you should smash that subscribe button, make me happy for the new year, but also time for me to say thank you for watching the videos on my channel. Thank you for being subscribers. I hope I have been a good content creator for you. I hope I have contributed to your better chess understanding, to your learning, to your improvement, and I hope to do better in the next year. I wish you all the best in the new year. I'll see you then, and until then, have merry holidays, enjoy it, and all the best for 2025. See you then. Cheers.